Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back for another positive talk. Super excited. 250. It's another milestone. So, super excited to be going live with my friend Leah, who I've shared multiple spaces with, whether it's in Clubhouse or in my own positive space. So, super excited. Let's see. There we go. Super excited. I put my camera up a little higher today, so we'll see how this goes. Hello. How are
Did
you?
did you just say 250 episodes?
Yes, this is the 250th episode.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. Yeah, thank you for being a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. That's dedication, and consistency, and that's how you build community, Drummond. So
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
it's crazy because like if you had told me when I did my first one that I would get anywhere close to 250, I would have been like, yeah, right. But
But here you
it
are.
it became a thing that I absolutely love. So I was super excited that it's getting to where it has for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exciting.
Well, I'll let you introduce yourself so people know who you are, and then we can kind of jump into a discussion.
Sounds good. Well, thank you very much, Drummond, for having me and allowing me to speak to your wonderful community. I know that's what you're all about. That's what positive space is building that community, a safe space where people can be themselves and live a positive life. So we
Yeah.
need more of that. So I'm Leah Abraham, and I am a childhood trauma expert. I work with adults who are ready to begin healing their childhood traumas and seeing their addictions with new perspective. So that's what I do in a nutshell. I have lots of conversations on Clubhouse. You and I co-moderate a room in Clubhouse where we speak to all different types of topics, but conscious awareness is, kind of at the base of all that I do. Really seeing ourselves clearly, seeing our situation clearly, and making the choice of how we want to move forward and create in our life. So
Yeah. And I think that those conversations, like every single week that we're a part of it, like it unlocks new things within ourselves. I think that that's the beauty about like the Clubhouse space is you bring people who are experts who are also sharing their vulnerabilities and sharing their journeys. Because one of the things that a lot of people talked to me about and wanted to work with me was because they saw my YouTube content where I was being vulnerable and sharing my journey. And I think that that's like a really beautiful thing because a lot of times we have that like disconnect where people see professionals as if we have lived an unflawed life from the day one to where we are. And I think that that's the beauty of Clubhouse and being able to do stuff like this because we can show that like we've lived through some experiences, we've done the work, we've done the healing, and we're not claiming to be perfect. We're still on that journey and we're sharing that so others can grow and hopefully heal the same way.
yes, it allows us to take off the mask, right? And just show up as our true authentic self, which is what people resonate with
Yeah.
and why they gravitate to you. Because when we are vulnerable and we share that we go through struggles, we've had our share of traumas and the work that it takes to heal and to be able to show up without the mask, people do appreciate that,
Yeah.
definitely.
I think another thing that's really beautiful is like when you create community around that, like sometimes someone else's story helps you understand your own, because that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is when you're a coach and you're working with people and asking them questions, sometimes we don't even have the answers to those questions because we haven't taken that time to understand ourselves on a deeper level. So sometimes hearing someone else's story, it like triggers something in you where it just starts ringing very true, and you're like, this is something I need to uncover and look into because I feel like I connected with this because something in my childhood or something in my life connected me to this story. And not
Absolutely.
everyone sits and asks themselves all these questions all the time, and I think it's important to kind of be in spaces where you can have those things unlocked.
Absolutely. The connecting of the dots by hearing other people share. And, you know, we're going to talk about trauma today, but often we don't have the words to speak about our traumas. So when we hear someone else say what we've been thinking or what we've been silencing within our own self, it's like, there's the words. Those are the words that I have always wanted to speak, but didn't know how. And so you're exactly right. Coming together in those spaces where we share, it does allow those dots to be connected for our own story and see more of it. Or like you said, something activates within you, and then we get the opportunity to be curious. Why did that affect me so much? Let me explore that. Let me be open to see what my subconscious is going to reveal to me in regards to that. Yeah, so it is powerful.
So when it comes to like childhood trauma versus trauma that we face as adults, because trauma can exist in so many different forms, what would you say to people that are dealing with trying to heal childhood trauma versus traumas that they've kind of faced as an adult? Because I definitely think that there is a huge difference in how our minds connect to those types of traumas.
So one thing that I want to make very clear is that we establish our core belief system in the first 7 years of our life. So the way that we view the world, the way we view ourselves, and the way we view ourselves in the world. So what we experience as adults is the byproduct of the core belief system that was developed in childhood. So I like to explain to people that we have these deep roots of this trauma that, you know, many of us experienced early on in childhood. And what has grown from that, you know, there's some good branches that have grown, but there's also, you know, some branches that we could prune off. So when we're out here and we're seeing what has grown from those roots on this branch, it's easier to see that. And this represents, you know, the trauma that we have as adults, the patterns that keep repeating in our life as adults. It's easy to see that. But what's very important is to know that it's attached to a deeper root. Mm-hmm. So when we address the traumas that we're experiencing as adults, when we see what has grown from that, that's great. And it's good to prune that. But it's necessary that we understand if we don't get to the root, it'll just grow back. Yeah. And we'll be dealing with it again. So the traumas that we experience as adults, they're tied to the traumas that we experienced in childhood. So the work that I do is always, you know, encouraging people to go deeper and to look at those deeper roots and to really try to uncover and remember the environment that you grew up in, you know, those first 7 years of your life. Yeah. That's where, you know, if we can uncover that and begin to process those traumas, then the traumas that we face as adults, they'll dissipate, they'll lessen. So
yeah, I mean, when I started doing the work of understanding my childhood traumas, it was almost like I finally realized that there was something that was causing me to live things on repeat. Like I was always trying to put band-aids on all these things that were like going wrong in my adult life. And I was like, why do I keep doing this to myself? Why do I keep choosing abusive people to be in my life? Why do I keep choosing a life where I'm surrounded by people who only want me for what I can give and not want me for just connection? And when I started looking back at my childhood and seeing some of the unhealthy things that I taught myself as laws of the world, I had to say, oh, okay, so now as an adult, I know that this is where my brain naturally will pull me if I don't heal this. And it feels unnatural sometimes when you try to get yourself out of the rut that you've created for yourself, because it's like a law in your head that you just believe is 100% true. But the more people I communicated with that are like, no, that's not how life is. No, like, you don't have to do that. Not everyone is like this. But like, when you have those beliefs as a child, like, it does really kind of pick and choose, like, something that might be healthy. If you had an unhealthy model as a child, you would push away because it doesn't seem like it fits into your realm of being. But that's because that trauma has created a normalcy for you, because it became a core belief, it became your life. So the normalcy of it exists, and you attract what you feel is normal, and you reject what you feel like shouldn't be there. And if healthy relationships is what feels unnatural to you, you will unfortunately push those out of your life because it just doesn't feel like it's supposed to be there. Your brain will start to do whatever it needs to protect you because it doesn't like change, it doesn't like different. And I think that that's important for people to realize. And on that journey of uncovering, you may start to see things that are very uncomfortable to discuss, are really hard to dive into and like talk to someone about. So it's really important to connect with someone you really trust and who's going to be there for you and is not going to like jump out when things get hard, because it does get hard digging into your past like that and uncovering things that are causing you to do things on repeat that are not healthy for you.
Yes. Yes, Drummond, what you shared there, that we get so comfortable in what's normal to us. And when we're raised in environments where trauma is normal, that's the world that we create. It's the only world we know until we bring in this awareness, which is so key, to changing those patterns. We have to be able to see them first and then understand, or ask the question, do I want to continue creating this world for myself, or is there a different world that I can create? And excuse me, sometimes we don't even know that other world exists until we meet someone, or we hear someone speaking about that, or we see an example of it in a movie. uh, I'll share that in therapy, my therapist had me do an exercise where she wanted to know what is an ideal family, what would that look like for me. And the only thing that I could think of is the movie Stuart Little with the mouse. And and that came to mind because he does all these things and like makes all this ruckus, but they never get angry at him. It's always just like his curiosity and, well, how are we going to move forward from here? And so that was like the example of what a good family was to me when I was first like imagining that it could be different than the environment in which I was raised and I grew up in. So until we have this knowing that we can change it, we're aware first of all of that wasn't okay, that was trauma, that was a traumatic environment, and then we see that clearly, and then we can say, well, I can choose to change that, I can create something different. And then we explore, well, what is that going to look like? And it does take a lot of conscious effort, like you said, because if we're thinking about what's really happening, it's those neural pathways that are built in the brain. And we just, something triggers from the outside and we go to what we know. We go to what we know. So to alter that, to change a core belief, essentially, we have to be aware and we have to pause and create a new neural pathway. But the beauty is that we can do that. We have neuroplasticity. We can restructure, rewire our own brain, but it takes that conscious effort and that courage to really look at where those neural pathways first developed and why. And so, yeah, thank you for speaking to that.
Yeah, it's just like, for me, it's very different to kind of see, because growing up and then healing and then having siblings that grew up with similar things in their lives and seeing the different levels of healing that we've gone through for ourselves, and then seeing it kind of play and repeat. Because once you are awakened to the fact that that is something that can create the life you're living, and then you look into your siblings who have done different work for themselves when it came to healing, it's like you can kind of see where it plays out. And I am very aware when I see things playing out when it came to limitations that my mom had or limitations that my dad had, and how that became a core belief of mine, that those were actually my limitations as well. And then seeing healing past that, and then looking back and seeing other people who are still following those laws and believing that that is the truth. And I was like, wow, this is interesting work to be a part of, because not everyone takes that journey, and trying to get people to see it is not easy, especially when they don't want it. Like if they're not seeking it, when you try to give them that, it's almost like a rejection letter. They're like, no, thank you. So it's like, how do you kind of get people to understand the importance of that work? And even people who don't have like traumatic childhoods still have beliefs that may be limiting them in achieving goals that they have. Because even I've told people, when it comes to setting a goal, the more people you know, the more diverse your community is, the more opportunities present themselves to you. But like living in a small town versus being in a place that's a large city with lots of different opportunities, you have a very set mindset of what you are capable of and what the universe will give you. And a lot of times you'll see in smaller towns, people will take over family businesses because that's what they know. They, at some point, told themselves that whatever they wanted was not available to them. And I think that that's also part of the childhood trauma healing that's really important for people.
Yeah, Drummond, you said it there. We cannot we cannot ask others to walk the same path that we're on. And I've had to learn that the hard way too, because in this healing process, you do uncover so much, and reconnecting back to who you are, that's very empowering. And so when you're on this healing journey, it's like you want to give this to other people that you know could benefit from it too. You want the world to know, I remember reading the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and I remember thinking to myself, like, now I understand why people go door to door and like talk about the good book or whatever, like, because that's what I wanted to do with The Power of Now. I'm like, you got to read this, and if you just understood this concept, it will change your life. But you cannot. Everybody is walking their own path. And so what I had to learn is, okay, I want to walk my path the best way that I can. And so it always comes back to self. And what I've realized is that people are always watching you. People recognize when you have changed, when your core beliefs have changed, when you're creating new things in your life that they don't think are possible, and that at one point you didn't think was possible. So the best way to help anybody is to live your alignment and to live your purpose and to walk your path the best way that you can. And then when people are curious and they start coming to you and asking, definitely that's when we extend what we know and we extend the hand. But that is something that everyone needs to hear. We cannot have someone walk our path. We can encourage them to walk their own by walking ours and being that example for them. But in terms of like siblings and things of that nature, I think we all play a role in these family systems. And the beautiful thing is when we recognize that we don't have to play that role anymore. There was a time in childhood where we had to play that role. That was part of our survival. But as adults who have grown in emotional intelligence and now with the awareness of seeing, like, I'm playing this role that I didn't audition for, that I was cast into without my consent. And then we can choose to remove ourselves from the play entirely, or to play the role that we feel called to play. So I think that's really important to understand, that in family systems we are coaches, so we have a calling to this deeper healing work. I know my siblings, they're not coaches. I don't think they want to be. They're on their own path. So they don't have that same calling to this healing journey. And they're okay, you know, playing their same role. And so I have to be okay with that too.
Yeah.
Um, but it is, you know, it's important for us to walk our path the best way that we can. So that's empowering to know that we can change our life. And I think that's where it gets to be fun when we're walking our own path and getting to create our life the way that we choose. And if they want to come along and join us, that's great. If they don't, that's okay too. But
Yeah.
we're happy, you know, we're on that path. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I before like I started doing Clubhouse and stuff, I used to talk about like unpacking our basement of memories we've collected over time
That's a good
because
way to say it, the basement of memories.
like I don't want people to like go and just grab everything from their basement and bring it upstairs because that would be overwhelming and it would clutter and create so much mess in our current time. But going down to the basement of memories and sorting through them because and I think that you also have a really interesting perspective because you're also a parent now. So you kind of get to see how your actions impact your children and you understand on a deeper level like what your actions do impact your child on lots of different levels. So you kind of get to go through that. But going back to the basement and unpacking memories and looking at these memories with an adult mind is so important because for me, there was a lot of my dad shouldn't have done this, my mom shouldn't have done this, these people should have known better. But going back as an adult who is now the age of what my parents were when these traumas were created for me, I now can look at it and give it a lot of forgiveness because we're imperfect. And as a child, we almost assume a parent's intent, the trauma that's created, is like their intent to create the trauma. Like, how could they? How dare they? Whereas it's more of a, there's not a handbook for how to do any of this. Like, there's definitely some healing that we could do to not pass down generational trauma. But I think that when you look at your parents and understand that I wouldn't know how to raise a kid perfectly at this age. It's like, so they were doing their best and along the way, like celebrating their successes because they did give a lot of really great things as well. And then looking at the things that they did that weren't great with forgiving eyes and being like, okay, these people were just people like me and my friends. Because, like, I wouldn't go up to my friend and be like, wow, you just destroyed your child's life. Like, I wouldn't say something like that. I'd be like, well, you know, like, we're all people. Like, you're doing the best you can. Thinking about the world we live in now, you start to think, wow, they were probably thinking about financial stuff that as a child, I had no clue would impact someone's mood or how they're like going around their day-to-day life. And it's important to kind of go back and look at some of the things that were like monsters to us as kids that we just assumed was a monster and we have feared it from childhood to adulthood and we allow it to make us make decisions in life and go back and maybe see it as just something that was a simple mistake that can be forgiven and now looked at in a different way. So now we're not making decisions out of fear of something that we saw as a monster back then, but now see it as something so much smaller and something that we can look at and forgive.
Hmm. It's interesting that that concept of the monster because in the work that I do, a lot of what I hope for is to remove the fear of dealing with our trauma because in the child mind it is the big monster, and often it will stay that way until we give it the attention from our adult self with the emotional intelligence that we've built up now. And then we see that okay, it's not this big monster, it's not as scary, and there's not so much fear around it now. So it is important to remove the fear around around trauma, what I explain to people is that you have already survived the worst of it. You survived it when you were a child. So as this conscious adult, to journey back through, or to process that trauma now, it's a completely different journey, and you're capable, you're strong enough because you were strong enough to survive it as a child. I want to say something though, as in terms of, I love this concept of like everything in the basement, you don't want to bring it up. So so think about it this way, that our inner child lives in the basement with all of that crap, and we've shut the door on it, but now here we are as the adult saying, okay, I know there's a lot of stuff in the basement. I need to deal with that stuff. If we go as our adult self into the basement and we're choosing the box that we want to bring up for the day, that's okay. But the best thing to do is to invite that younger part of ourself, that child part of ourself that's down there living with all that stuff, to bring up the box that they want for the day. So
Yeah.
so the difference being that we don't necessarily have to go back into our traumas. We have to be present in our body so that whatever the subconscious reveals to us in the present moment, we can process it. So that think about it like that way. If we're trying to, as the adult self, go back to the trauma, then we're going down there and picking the box, and that it can be done that way.
Yeah.
But if we're just sitting here present and saying, okay, younger self, I'm here in my body. Okay, subconscious mind, I'm here in my body, ready for you to bring up the box from the basement that you are wanting to discuss. And I'm here to help you process it. And then it's that younger part of yourself and the adult self that are then processing that box together. So and in terms of looking at our parents' situation, that is important in terms of forgiveness. And forgiveness is a huge concept and can bring us a lot of peace, to understand that we're all victim of victim of victim. Our parents had their share of trauma that was unresolved, that they carried into their unconscious parenting. So it's good to understand that. But for the healing and the processing of our trauma, it is important to give voice to our younger self, the younger self that didn't understand it the way that we do as the adult. Because with our adult mind, we can look back and say, I understand that. Yes. Oh my gosh, the finances, all this. I was probably causing a lot of stress. Yes, I understand. The adult self can always understand. But the part of us that wants to be healed is that younger self, that child self that didn't understand. And so it's very important to connect with that part of us and give that part of us a voice to say what they want, to say, no, that, I will never understand why you did that to me, because the child will never understand. The adult self, yes. And that's the beauty and the power of inner child healing work, where we our adult self reconnect with that younger self, and then we process together. We allow them to bring that box to us, and we process it together. That's so important for healing. And the reason why I want to stress that is because so often in the work that I do, I see that people come to a barrier when it comes to their parents, because the relationship now as an adult is good. It's fine. We get along. I don't want to hurt my parents. I understand my parents.
Yeah.
But for our healing, it's imperative that we give voice to that little child that didn't understand. And then once we process it, then the relationship is actually, the energy between the parent and child, that will heal too. And the relationship as an adult that you have with your parents will strengthen, and it will be better. But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of take a moment to really touch on that, because sometimes it creates such a block for people to get to that deeper healing when they're concerned about their parents or hurting their parents' feelings, or, you know, seeing their parents in a different light. It is okay. It is okay to be angry, you know, for a period during this healing process. I feel it's necessary.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah. I love that, because I think you have to understand the way that the child saw it for you to understand why you make choices with your subconscious mind as an adult, because it was the child's belief that is triggering your belief system now.
Yes.
And like money issues as a child, you do not understand that. Like, I just, as a child, you assume your parents have endless money and they're just not choosing to give it to you because they want you to be upset and miserable. And so, like, when you form a relationship with money as a child in an unhealthy way, that translates into an unhealthy relationship as an adult with money. And I know that a lot of people struggle with the way that they relate to money. And I know that that can be a childhood thing. It's same with, like, when it comes to your health, like whether it's mental health or physical health, like the relationship with food. I know people who have struggled because for them, maybe things that their parents said about their appearance is just etched and burnt into their soul, and they carry that. And there's a healing process, and it does require you to go all the way back to where it stemmed from. And that can be a really powerful place to heal, but also a really painful place to go. And like you said, that relationship, those thoughts were put into your head because of the relationship with your parents and what they said. And it can make you really angry with the fact that you knew I was a child. Why was this put on my plate? Because that became a belief system. And I think that that's where, like, having those conversations with children as adults, or as you being an adult having a conversation with your child, if you lash out because you're having a bad day, having that conversation with the child when they're a child and getting them to explain their feelings and connecting with them and helping them give clarity to their core beliefs at that age is so important. Just because we can try to explain them the world around us as we know it as adults, but it's still not translating to them the same. So money problems to a child translates very differently. It becomes a belief system that it's not enough, we don't have enough, there's never enough. And that can create so many life choices that have such a negative impact on someone's ability to do something that they want to do with their life. I know for me personally, when it came to money, I had one side of my family who was very successful, very wealthy, and I had the other side that did not have money. But I was very much taught that this was the direction you would want. You don't want this. But looking back as an adult, there was a lot of love on this side, a lot of connection and importance on being there for one another. And for me, I cherish that. But there's that struggle inside of me who is always saying, well, this is bad because you're going to end up poor and not have enough money to support yourself. So I have to do more of this, which is great financially, but there was no love over here. So, like, I'm constantly battling with, like, it's okay to have both. You can find a way to combine these in a healthy way. And yes, money grants you things that pure love doesn't give you. Like, if you need to buy food, you can't just walk in and be like, I'll give you a hug for this bag of groceries. But, like, it's important to understand you can have both, because, like, my childhood mind was you had to choose either or.
Yes, Drummond. That right there is such a good example, because in the child's mind, they think it's either this or that. And nobody tells you it can be both. You can take the love and this. So we see it so black and white. In the work that I do when we're coming from trauma, we see the world in black and white. It's either this or it's that. I'm either safe or I'm not safe. It's either good or it's bad. And so we grow up into these adults who think it's either this or it's that. It's black and white. And so getting to that space of the creative middle, the colored middle, it takes the healing and the understanding of, no, that was just the scenario in my case, but it's not the way that it has to be. But it's, again, those core beliefs that are developed in childhood and that run our lives until we become conscious to them, and then until we choose to restructure them or alter them or change them. But that awareness has to be there first. And when we don't have adults who are conscious and aware around us telling us these things, it's like we just have to come into it on our own, which we will. You know, our path will always lead us to the right people, the right connections, and we will. If we're open to that and we're wanting that for ourselves, the path will lead us. It will lead us there, but it's nice to be able to have conversations and be part of communities like this, where this is conversations that are happening, where we're asking you to look at your core beliefs that were developed in childhood and then believe that you have the capability to alter them, to change them. But again, it does go back to the child who created those core beliefs. And then just one thing I'll say again about that parenting is, remember that it's not to place blame. It is your fault that, you know, that I have these core beliefs. Technically, yes, it is, but it's not to place blame. It's to understand ourselves. It's to see ourselves clearly. That is so important in on this healing journey, is to see ourselves clearly, to see our situation clearly, because otherwise it's the denial that we live behind. And where there's denial, there is not clarity. We're not seeing clearly. So I just wanted to reiterate that it's not about placing blame or, you know, condemning your parents forever. It's about understanding yourself. So
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think, the journey of discovering self is, and the thing that I've learned is you have to put yourself in so many different places to understand yourself better, because everyone you connect with unlocks new parts of yourself to discover. Because for me personally, like when it came to moving so many different times, every time I moved and met new people, or when I grow myself, say, okay, I want to do this new thing, and I become a new version of myself because I've gained new information, new triggers are hit with understanding myself. And I think for me, it was really important to find the way to understand my triggers and not play the blame game in general, because a lot of times people don't know they've triggered us because they have different triggers. They grew different lives, different journeys. And I've kind of gotten to the point now when I put myself in new places, I grow myself to new levels in life, I'm keeping track of my triggers. And the ones that I've discovered kind of go back to childhood traumas. I have done a lot of work there. So I can kind of pinpoint those new ones and just kind of follow the thread back to the place and know that that's another place where I have to understand, hey, this is still here. Because a lot of times I'm like, I've healed a lot, I've gotten it, but then I put myself in a new situation and it's a new trigger that I didn't know existed. But seeing that and being the person that I need to be to go back to that child and be like, let's talk, let's heal this, like, let's have a conversation. It's a really rewarding place to be, because you can be the adult that your younger child self needed at that time.
yes, Drummond, I'm gonna show you something, because this particular conversation comes up a lot. So if we think about, you know, like a spiral, we can encounter the same pattern on our journey multiple times. Yeah. And it's important to understand that we are not the same person. So this pattern, we encountered it here, and we handled it the best way that we could when we were here. This same pattern, we will encounter it again, but we are not the same person.
Yeah.
So our response will be different than it was here. And then again, we'll encounter that same pattern here, because a lot of times people are like, but I have done the work on this. I've healed that. I've done so much work on that. Like, why is it back in my life again? And it's simply that. It's to help us up level and so that we can gauge where we're at in terms of that particular pattern. But if it is coming into our life, there's still something that lives within us that's activating that pattern, or that pattern is attaching to and activating within us. So it's just an opportunity to see where we're at with that particular pattern. And I think that's really important for people to understand, because it can be very discouraging when you start doing this work and you've done all of this healing and you're doing this processing and you're crying and you're doing all the things, and then it comes back in your life and you're just like, you know, it can be very you know, for me it used to like set me back, but now I'm recognizing that no, this is that, sure, it's the same pattern, but I am a different person. So here it is again. Let's see how I'm going to respond to it this time around, and how easy it's going to be for me to move through it. And it's incredible when we start recognizing that we are not the same person. All the work that we put in, all the conscious awareness that we're building, it is getting us closer to our center. You know, we're getting closer to our center, to our aligned space. But those patterns will come back around. That's the nature of them. That's the nature of the particular lesson that we're supposed to learn around that pattern. I like also that you said, you know, people won't know that they're triggering us because they have different triggers. And so it's always important to understand that this work, it's personal. It's a journey that we take for ourselves. It's so easy to do the blame game, or to, you know, you made me feel this way, like that victim mindset. Like, most of us have lived in that victim mindset. I know that it all the time with my first son, with my ex. You know, it was his fault, completely his fault. But when we can understand that everything is happening internal, and when somebody activates something within us, it's because that pattern lives within us. You know, because there could be you and I, the same person, saying the same thing, and it can trigger the heck out of me and be totally fine with you, because it passes through you, but it gets stuck to something in me. So it's very important for us to understand it's happening here. So if we want to heal it, we heal it from the inside out. We heal it on the inside, it will no longer affect us on the outside, or the way we respond to it is different on the outside. So yeah, thank you for speaking to that. It's important for people to understand you are on this journey, you are making progress. Same pattern, but you are not the same person.
Yeah, one like example that I like to share with people is, like, when it comes to being someone in the LGBT community, if I were to stand in a crowd where the word gay is repeated in a negative way, that's very triggering for me, because it's something that I identify with. Whereas someone who isn't, they may hear the word gay, but it's not ringing in their ears to where everything else is just silence and that's the only thing you hear. And like, that's something that I recognized as there's still some trauma there. And when it's something that's obvious, like for me talking to my straight counterparts, where I'm like, oh my God, like that person, all they focused on was the fact that gay is like this bad thing. Like they're only focused on gay, and they talked about gay people. And I'm like, how could you not hear that? Like, that's the only thing they said. And it's because once it hit that part in my mind was like looking at it from all angles and trying to discover why this person had so much hate. While as someone who was not triggered by it could hear other things that were being said, and it was very low on their level of attention. And I was just like, oh, okay, so other people are triggered differently. And when it came to like taking that power back, I healed myself. And now when I hear people saying that, I see them as someone who they have some type of pain that they're dealing with, and they are attacked this community or these groups of people because of pain that they're dealing with. And it no longer triggers me to where I can be like completely thrown off my like stage, but now I can sit there and go, I'm listening for more key words that they're sharing that might be their triggers or their pain points. And now I can see past my own trauma and pain and see others' pain and trauma. And that's a really important thing, because I think a lot of times children who heal go back and try to heal their parents, and then it like puts them in that spiral, because children aren't really meant to heal their parents. Like parents are meant to see that their traumas exist and go where they need to go to heal. Because a lot of times if we try to go back and revisit that and try to help them heal, all of our triggers come back, because that's where our triggers were built. Like that's the area that we don't need to go back and try to help people heal through. And that was something that I had to learn, because I wanted to go back and help my mom, but there were so many things that she needed to heal. But in that process of her saying things, it felt like excuses for me, and it felt like she was trying to say she wasn't responsible for it. It was someone else. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh, I did a lot of healing just to come right back to this place and put all this trauma back into my cup. But it's just understanding that and taking your power where it exists and using it to make a difference where you can without destroying yourself in the process.
Yes. That's an important point. We cannot heal our parents. We cannot heal anybody. Even as coaches, we don't heal anybody. We just guide people back to their own self. Yep. We help people find the healer within them, because each of us are our own greatest healer, but we have to choose to heal. So our parent has to choose to heal. And yeah, so that's a really important point. We are not meant to heal our parents. We are meant to heal ourselves. That's the only person we're responsible for. And in doing that, in taking responsibility for our own healing, it does have a positive impact and influence on everybody else in our life. Definitely, if we have children, it impacts their how they're going to see the world. It impacts their core beliefs. So it does have a positive impact on everybody around you, but it has to be a personal choice. It has to be a personal choice, and we can only heal our own self. No. We cannot heal for somebody else. We cannot force anybody into their healing. We cannot will them into the healing. Yeah. No matter how hard we try, believe me, I have. But and you know what you talked about with the words, you know, when something that we hear from the outside activates our nervous system and says like danger, danger, it's like then all we can do is think about how do I get myself into a safe space from that danger. So you're right, it's like we block out everything else. We can't, they could say like 1,000 wonderful, beautiful things, but that one thing that activated our nervous system puts us in that defense mode, and we can't hear or do anything else except think about how can I make myself safe because they've threatened me. So you're exactly right. When we find ourselves in those situations where one thing that somebody says, like, and then we can't hear anything else, that is definitely an opportunity to heal a deeper wound within us. And it's in those moments that we can be grateful and be like, okay, now I know exactly what needs healing, what work I have to heal around. And so we can focus on that. We can heal that. And when we have healed that, it's no longer a threat. And so we now hear that word, but we don't go into that fight, flight, or fight mode. We're just like, okay, I can take this, I can process it. You know, we may not still like it, yeah, but we can process it and we can stay present instead of being pulled into that, well, now I'm in fight, flight, or freeze mode and I've got to create safety for myself somehow. So it allows us to stay present, and that's where we want to be. That's where our point of power is, in the present moment. So yeah, that was important that you said that.
Yeah. And I think that in life, we remove our own power so quickly. Like blaming other people, you're giving them power over you. When it comes to allowing yourself to be pulled back and not take that opportunity as this is an area of healing, we give other people the right to trigger us and remove our power. Because when people can remove you from the present moment just by saying something, like that's an extreme power. And there are people who can use that. I mean, I've learned that society as a whole, when it comes to being like a selling culture, they do that on purpose. Like they want to send you to a place of pain and then convince you that they have what you need to not feel that. When that's not healing, that's them selling you a product and them benefiting from your pain. And it's important to kind of take that control back, because people use it all the time, like to get you to buy something. They'll be like, you don't want to experience this pain, do you? And you're like, no, I don't. And they're like, well, here's a product. And people will buy in that mindset. But once you kind of heal that and you take power, you're like, no, I know that's not really what's going to heal me. No, I don't really need it. And it's funny how frustrated people can become when they don't have that power to manipulate you into something.
You know, that's a beautiful example. And German, I love how you said that taking people away from their present moment is a power in itself. And that's exactly what advertisers do. Remember that time when you felt this way. So pull yourself away from where you're at right now and go into the past of when you were in that pain. Well, don't worry, I can help you get here and never experience that again. So again, like not in the present moment, but over here in an imaginary space of when I have this thing, I'm going to be over there. But our point of power is always in the present. When we're in our body, when we're connected to our body, and we're taking in the information from our surrounding environment and processing it with our five senses, and we're giving that information to our brain, and then our mind is getting in touch with our subconscious and our core beliefs, and we're making sense of what we're taking in from the environment. It's from that space that we're going to make the decision that is most beneficial to us. Not when we're thinking about that pain that we were in over there, or how great it's going to be when we're over there. It's what's happening in my body right now is going to tell me what I need right now, or what's going to be best for me. So yeah, I loved that you said that. It is giving our power away when people can pull us away from our present moment. But when we're present, and we're present with that person, and we're engaged with our body, we're engaged with that individual, we're powerful. We're so powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's important for people to hear. So
Yeah.
we are powerful beings.
Yeah, most definitely. And I see that we're getting close to the end of the hour. And I know that Instagram here lately has like snapped the live right at 60 minutes. But I do think that like when it comes to our personal powers, like there are people who can manipulate you as well, not just companies and brands, like relationships, where it's like, you don't want to be lonely, do you? And it goes back to that childhood memory of being alone and feeling like no one's ever going to love you, where people can stay in abusive relationships because people keep throwing them off their power. It's like, oh, this moment where you think you want to leave because you know that this abuse is not something you should have to put up with, but they throw you back into that childhood moment of where you really truly believe you could end up alone, and that pain is really hard. So you choose to stay in present pain because that pain that you've lived with as a core belief is, I could end up alone, so I should stay in this relationship where I'm not alone despite the negative impact it's having on you. Like, it's really important to see that, because that's where it comes from. I was in a relationship where people are like, I don't get why you would stay in this relationship. the more I did the work of self-healing, I started to see I was afraid of being alone. So I chose to stay with someone because the other option was I was going to be alone for a little bit, but my mind had this you will be alone forever mindset. So I chose to stay in a very bad place because moving forward alone didn't have a guarantee of someone coming in the future, but that was the mindset of you will forever be alone. And I was in a place where I wasn't alone at the moment, wasn't a good place, but I had that belief system that was so like core to my belief that I chose pain in this present moment that was very toxic over the pain I thought could exist of being alone.
Yeah. Yeah, Drummond, that's definitely something that many people experience. And it's important to understand that it goes back to those core beliefs built in childhood that I'm going to be rejected, I'm going to be left alone, I'm not enough, all of those things. So one thing that I'll leave with, I think it's a good last point to make, is self-love. Self-love is so necessary, and it's often so foreign to us when we're coming from trauma and all we got was the rejection and the examples of what is not love. And so this concept of loving ourselves, it's new for many of us, but remembering that it's our natural state, it's our most organic state, it's how we were born in love, that perfection, you know. So it's really just coming back to that knowing of who we've always been. But it can be really a hard concept when we've lived without it for so long, when we're so used to that inner critic or giving our power away, allowing other people to control us. This idea of I'm the master of my mind, I'm the creator of my world, I love myself enough to stay in the present moment, to choose what's best for me. It can be really hard, but the act of aligning ourselves in the present moment, that's the greatest act of self-love that we could ever make.
Yeah.
Choosing to be present in our body. So self-love is so important. The last thing I'll say about that is that there are different levels of self-love. You know, we talk about doing mirror work and affirmations and speaking kindly to the self. That's like way up here. The first levels of self-love are acknowledgement. So acknowledging the parts of ourself that we have hidden in the basement, that we've rejected, that were once rejected. So those parts of ourself, our traumas, our addictions, acknowledging them, seeing them clearly, seeing them with open, clear eyes, no denial around them, but seeing them. Yeah. And then accepting them, that they're there and they're a part of us. That's all we need to do to bring self-love into our life. Acknowledge all of our parts, even the ones we don't like, acknowledge them and accept them as us. Yeah. And that's enough. But that self-love is key. It's so key. So yeah, Drummond, thank you for this conversation.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming on. And for those of you that are watching, like, conversations like this happen on Clubhouse all the time in all the spaces that Leah and I are in. So feel free to join us there. And of course, Positive Space, we're starting that and creating those types of conversations as well. So thank you so much.
I just want to take a moment and talk about your Positive Space. Like, I've been a part of it now. I've joined a couple of the Sunday groups. It's exactly what you say it is. It's a positive space. There's music, there's dancing, there's affirmations, there's helpful tools, there's kind people. So if you guys are not a part of Positive Space yet, join that. Try it out. I'm telling you, I've been a part of many different groups, and this one is so uplifting. I leave there just feeling like so good, so uplifted. So what you're creating, Drummond, it's very special, and I appreciate being invited to share into your community today. So
yeah, I appreciate that. That's what I want that space to be. So I'm glad that that's something that is coming through, because sometimes you can have the intention, but it doesn't always come through. But I found some pretty amazing people to be a part of it, and I'm so glad that you came in.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, I will let you go so you can have a good rest of the night, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Drummond.
Yep. Bye.
Take care. Thank you,
You
everyone
too.
who joined.